touchdown, Trey McBride.
Welcome back to the 2022 Draft Position Preview Series. We're talking tight ends today, and this would have been a different conversation a couple months ago when we were in the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Let's start with the Senior Bowl guy, though, a Long Island native in Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State.
Ruckert actually lined up for the Jets staff during Senior Bowl week. You look at his numbers and say 26 receptions, 3 total touchdowns last year. What are we talking about? It's not Ruckert's fault he played at Ohio State that had an offense that featured Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, 2 of the top receivers in this draft class. They might go 1-2 at that position in this draft. Ruckert is a guy who flashed down with his opportunities in Mobile, Alabama, with not only his route running, but his hands. And the thing that really stands out with him is he's a tenacious blocker. He's going to help you in the run game. And tight ends in the National Football League who can do more, you're going to stay more on the field. That gives offensive coordinators flexibility.
Well, to your point, Ruckert wasn't really asked a lot as a receiver, especially with all the talent there in Columbus that you mentioned. So let's move out west to somebody who really has good receiving numbers. That's Greg Dulcich out of UCLA.
Dulcich in his pro day reminded me of you on the beach, man, running around with the shirt off.
I hope one day, a couple inches taller maybe.
And longer hair, but Dulcich, 17.6 yards a catch over the course of his career. Last year, Dorian Thompson-Robinson's #1 target, 60 yards receiving per game, 5 touchdowns in 12 starts. He earned first-team all-conference honors, and this is a former walk-on who's going to stretch the field on the next level.
All right, so we know that tight ends come in all different shapes and sizes, kind of like Dulcich and Ruckert, very 2 different players. Let's just use Trayvon Wesco as an example. Inline blocker, out wide, and also the team's primary fullback the last 2 seasons. So let's hear from Caroline on a prospect who offers versatility in that regard.
Connor Hayward had options when Kenneth Walker transferred into Michigan State to take over the running back spot that Hayward desperately wanted. One of those options was for him to transfer since he was eligible to be a graduate transfer. Instead, he became the ultimate team player by staying with the Spartans and taking his skills to the tight end position. Not only did Hayward own the tight end position, MSU used him to dominate kickoff returns as well. Hayward ended his career with 825 rushing yards on 211 carries with 5 touchdowns, had 96 career receptions for 711 yards and 6 touchdowns, and returned 33 kickoffs in his career for 723 yards. So life doesn't always work out the exact way you plan, but that's helped Hayward realize that all it really means is there are plenty more ways to get your foot in the door for an NFL job.
Just a tremendous season from Connor Hayward. Talk about family lineage, EA. His brother, Cameron Hayward, great player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And his father, well, you watched him as a kid growing up in training camp.
Yes, I do remember Craig Ironhead Hayward, and you can find him on the Google.
All right, well, if Hayward is a little more of a fullback, Connor Hayward, and I guess his father as well, how about a Senior Bowl prospect known for his receiving? That's Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina, a high school wide receiver.
Isaiah was likely to get in the end zone on the collegiate level. 12 touchdowns last season, 22 touchdowns from 2019 to 21, averaged 15.4 yards per reception on 133 career receptions. He's a guy who can get down the field. He's got really good athletic ability. Now, how capable of a blocker is he going to be on the next level?
Well, I think that just leads us to somebody who's very capable as a blocker. Let's bookend this with Jeremy Ruckert, a good blocker, and Jelani Woods out of Virginia, perhaps, EA, the best blocker of the bunch.
Oh, Jelani Woods. What is there not to like? 6'7", 275 pounds. He transferred in from Oklahoma State. Could have played basketball for Tony Bennett, I think. Last year, 5 straight games with a receiving touchdown. His 8 touchdowns were the most by any tight end in the ACC and the 4th most in the country. Nearly 600 yards receiving. Now let's speak about his athletic ability. 24 reps at 225 pounds, most of any tight end at the combine. Also, at 6'7", he ran a 4.61, and oh, by the way, he played quarterback in high school.
This draft class is very deep at tight end, and these guys right here, these 5 players, are a good example of that. But Caroline, much like safety, the Jets added to the position in free agency with C.J. Uzomah, Tyler Conklin. So where do fans stand in terms of adding a tight end in the draft?
So our fans are torn. There is practically a tie between, yes, draft a tight end on day 3, and no, they don't want to draft another. It was our closest poll yet, with both of those options only being separated by 1%. So this one was probably my favorite poll because it was the most interesting to me.
You know, I think going into the poll, this one I was going to be the most curious about, especially after the moves in free agency. But I want to point out that C.J. Uzomah and Tyler Conklin, both 5th-round picks. So if the Jets do end up going the day 3 route, they could get a good player.
Yeah, they could, but the Jets really addressed the tight end position here in free agency, so it's not a need on draft weekend. Uzomah, he's got the championship pedigree. He's also going to be a target inside the red zone, 6'6", a number of career highs last season, playing for a young quarterback in Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Now he'll play with Zach Wilson, of course. And Conklin is a guy who really popped last year for the Minnesota Vikings. The Jets think these two guys complement each other really well, so the Jets definitely have some flexibility here. Maybe they add a tight end, not a pressing need. You're not going to see it on day 1 or 2. We know that.
Well, I think that's a great way to put a bow on tight ends. And for more draft coverage, you got to stay right here on NewYorkJets.com.